small town of Black Hollow was known for its lush forests, clear lakes, and deep winding caves that stretched beneath the earth like veins of a hidden beast. Though most of the townsfolk stayed away from the labyrinthine caverns, there was one entrance in particular that everyone avoided: the maw. It was a gaping, jagged opening in the hillside, overgrown with vines and moss, that looked like the mouth of a giant creature frozen in a scream. Legends swirled around the maw for generations. Some said it was the mouth of an ancient evil, while others believed it was cursed ground, a place where the dead whispered and shadows moved on their own. No one had dared to enter it for over a century, until tonight. Emily Reed wasn't one to believe in legends. As the town's resident geologist and amateur spelunker, she was more interested in the formations deep below the earth than old wives' tales. She'd explored most of the caves around Black Hollow, but the maw had always intrigued her. Something about its ominous presence had beckoned her, despite the warnings from the townsfolk. It was late autumn, and a chill hung in the air as Emily stood at the entrance of the maw. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing the jagged rocks and uneven ground ahead. The wind rustled through the trees, but inside the cave there was only silence, a deep, unsettling silence. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, her boots crunching on the loose gravel beneath her. She had left a note behind just in case, letting her friend Lila know where she was. It wasn't that she expected anything bad to happen. She was prepared with ropes, climbing gear, and extra batteries. But it was a precaution she always took before venturing into the unknown. As Emily descended into the cave, the light from the outside world began to fade. The narrow passageway widened into a cavernous room, the walls covered in ancient stalactites and stalagmites. Her flashlight flickered, casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. The air grew colder, and the silence deepened. Something felt off. She paused for a moment, listening. It was too quiet. She had been in enough caves to know that there should be sounds: the distant drip of water, the rustling of small creatures, the occasional echo of her own movements. But here there was nothing. It was as if the cave was absorbing all noise, swallowing it whole. Emily shook off the uneasy feeling and pressed on. She wasn't going to let a creepy atmosphere scare her off. The passage narrowed again, and she found herself crawling on her hands and knees, squeezing through a tight crevice. On the other side, the cave opened up into another large chamber, this one even more vast than the first. Her flashlight beam swept across the room, revealing strange markings on the walls. They were symbols, ancient, jagged symbols that looked like they had been carved into the rock by something not quite human. Emily frowned, moving closer to inspect them. She had never seen anything like this before. As she ran her fingers over the carvings, a low rumble echoed through the chamber. Emily froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The ground beneath her trembled, and small rocks began to fall from the ceiling. She quickly moved back, her flashlight flickering again. And then the rumbling stopped. For a moment she stood there, breathing heavily, her eyes darting around the chamber. But everything was still again. She chalked it up to a minor cave-in, something that wasn't uncommon in unstable environments like this. But as she turned to continue exploring, she felt something cold brush against the back of her neck. She whipped around, shining her flashlight into the darkness. There was nothing there, just the jagged walls of the cave and the eerie silence. But the feeling lingered, a deep, unsettling sensation that something was watching her. She couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. Emily decided it was time to head back. She had seen enough for one night. As she retraced her steps, the narrow passageways seemed to close in on her, the darkness pressing against her like a living thing. Her flashlight flickered more frequently now, casting her into brief moments of complete blackness. She quickened her pace, her breath coming in short gasps. The silence was oppressive, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. And then, as she neared the entrance to the cave, she heard it. A faint whisper just on the edge of her hearing. It was soft at first, barely audible, but it grew louder with each step she took. It wasn't words, not exactly, but a low, guttural sound, like something ancient and hungry, stirring deep within the earth. Emily broke into a run, her heart pounding in her chest. The light from the outside world was just ahead, but the whispers were growing louder, more insistent. She could feel something behind her, something cold and malevolent, chasing her through the darkness. Just as she reached the entrance, her flashlight flickered one last time and died. She stumbled out of the cave, her breath ragged, and collapsed onto the ground outside. The whispers stopped, the silence broken only by the sound of her own gasping breaths. She looked back at the cave, half expecting to see something emerge from the darkness. But there was nothing, only the gaping mouth of the maw, silent and still. Shaken, Emily stood up, her legs trembling beneath her. She didn't know what she had heard, what had been chasing her through the darkness, but she knew one thing for sure. The legends about the maw weren't just stories, they were warnings. And something in that cave was still waiting, still watching, hungry for the next soul to wander too far into its depths. As she turned to leave, a low, rumbling whisper echoed from the cave's entrance, barely audible but unmistakable. "Come back." She froze, the chill of terror crawling up her spine. The whisper repeated, this time louder, clearer, carrying with it the weight of something ancient and insidious. "Come back." Emily ran,